Jeffrey Dahmer was finally caught in 1991 after one of his would-be victims escaped and alerted police. What was discovered in Dahmer's apartment was horrifying. Body parts in a barrel, a human head in a refrigerator. When he confessed, the gruesome details were almost impossible to comprehend.
What was it, Jeff, that took you over the edge, do you think, and made you take this from the world of fantasy into reality?
From 15 on, I had this reoccurring fantasy of meeting a hitchhiker on the road and of taking him hostage and doing what I wanted with him. About 3 years later, I was 18 years old, driving home. I saw this hitchhiker about a mile from my house. Thought to myself, should I stop and pick him up or should I just keep on going? I wish I just kept on going, but I didn't. I turned around, picked him up, and that's when the nightmare became a reality. It just seemed so bizarre to me that this obsession that I had been thinking about and wanting, just all the parts are there, and they make it possible to make it happen.
What happened after you took him to the house?
The house was empty. My mother was up in Chippewa Falls with her family, and my dad was living in a rented motel about 5 miles away due to the divorce. And I pretty much had the place to myself. I was drinking a lot during that time, and just, I don't know, looking for something to, some way to find some fulfillment, some pleasure. And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
This was the summer of 1978 when you took your first victim.
Right. Once it happened the first time, it just seemed like it had control of my life from there on in. The second occurrence was 1984, roughly. And I met this guy at one of the bars, downtown Milwaukee bars. We went back to the hotel, just planning on getting drunk. I had put some sleeping pills in his drink to render him unconscious. And was just going to spend the night with him. When I woke up in the morning, my forearms were bruised, and his chest was bruised, and blood was coming out of his mouth. He was hanging over the side of the bed, and I have no memory of beating him to death, but I must have. And that's when it all started again.
And once it started again, you found it impossible to stop.
Right. That's when the obsession went into full swing.
Did you ever tell yourself, I have to stop this? I must stop doing this?
Yes.
When it was going on?
After the second time, it seemed like the compulsion to do it was too strong, and I didn't even try to stop it after that. But before the second time, things had been building up gradually, going to bookstores, going to the bars, the gay bars, bath clubs. When that wasn't enough, buying sleeping pills and using it on various guys in the bath clubs. It just escalated slowly but surely. And after the second time, which was not planned, it was out of control. It felt like it was out of control.
Where did sex enter in to the killings, Jeff?
It was a big part of it. My only objective was to find the best-looking guy that I could. Their sexual preference didn't matter to me.
Did their race matter to you?
No, their race didn't matter to me. The first two young men were white. The third young man was American Indian. The fourth and fifth were Hispanic. So no, race had nothing to do with it. It was just their looks.
Was there something sexual in the dismemberment of the bodies for you?
As time went on, yes, I did get there was a sexual part to that. I started saving the skeletons and preserving other parts, and one thing led to another. It took more and more deviant type behaviors to satisfy my urges, and so it just spiraled out of control.
Why the cannibalism?
It made me feel like they were a permanent part of me. Besides the just mere curiosity of what it would be like, it made them feel that they were a part of me, and it gave me a sexual satisfaction to do that.
Was it the killing that excited you, or is it what happened after the killing?
No, the killing was just a means to an end. That was the least satisfactory part. I didn't enjoy doing that. That's why I tried to create living zombies with muriatic acid and the drill, but it never worked. No, the killing wasn't the objective. I just wanted to have the person under my complete control, not having to consider their wishes, being able to keep them there as long as I wanted. It's not easy to say that, but that's what the motive was.
Where did that need for control come from? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Maybe I felt I had no control as a child or young adult, and that got mixed in with my sexuality, and I ended up doing what I did was my way of feeling in complete control, at least for that situation, creating my own little world where I had the final say, finding the best looking guy that I could, and having total mastery over him for as long as I wanted. Lust played a big part of it, controlling lust. That was the motive right there.
A lot of this came out in the course of the trial. Obviously, both of you sat through this. Have the two of you sat down and talked about these things before?
No, not in depth.
This is the first time you're talking about these things with
I've talked
your
about
dad
it
here.
at great length with psychiatrists, court-appointed psychiatrists, psychologists, but not with my family.
We learned everything at the trial and in the confessions and that sort of thing after the fact.
The two of you never really communicated all that much, did you, father and son?
Not on any deep level, no. We talked about superficial things. Never really had a real deep heart-to-heart talk about what was going on inside our own minds. I was always a very private person. I didn't like to open up and share anything with anyone. I like to keep my thoughts to myself.
Why do you think that was?
Because from about 15 years on up, a great deal of my thoughts were basically unshareable with anyone. So I just closed myself off and put on a mask of normalcy.
Coming up.
Were you surprised to read that about your dad?
Very surprised. I suppose everyone has their secret thoughts.
Before Chris Watts shocked the nation with the calculated murder of his pregnant wife and daughters, there was another kind of killer, quieter, lonelier, and far more gruesome. His name was Jeffrey Dahmer. He didn't stalk women. He didn't seek money. He didn't lash out in rage. Dahmer hunted young men, often vulnerable, usually gay, and most of them had just one thing in common: they turned him down. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't even personal, not in the way people expect. For Dahmer, rejection didn't sting, it obsessed. And in his world, obsession wasn't something you moved past. It was something you consumed. In neighborhoods where people complained about foul smells that never went away, Dahmer was quietly building something human, something horrifying. Skulls lined his closet. Heart sat in his freezer. Acid boiled flesh in his bathroom. So the real question isn't just what Dahmer did. It's what the system didn't do. How many warnings were ignored? How many lives could have been saved? And what happens when someone gets used to being invisible? Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, an ordinary birth in a quiet Midwestern neighborhood. He was the first child of Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. Lionel, a graduate student in chemistry, was deep into his academic work. Joyce, his mother, struggled with bouts of depression, anxiety, and later, prescription drug dependency. To neighbors, they looked like a normal family. But inside that house, the tension cut deeper than anyone could see from the outside. From the beginning, there were different versions of what home looked like for Jeffrey. Some family members insisted he was well cared for. Others, like relatives who spent more time behind the scenes, spoke of cold silences and constant fighting. What can't be disputed is the documented instability between his parents. Medical records confirm Joyce's dependence on sleeping pills and morphine. At one point, she attempted suicide while Jeffrey was still a child. It didn't make the news. But it made an impression. His father, Lionel, has since admitted in interviews that he was largely absent. Focused on school. Focused on making something of himself. He loved his son, but he wasn't there. And when he was, his attention was pulled elsewhere, toward his wife's episodes, her isolation, her paranoia. Toward holding the family together, while it slowly came apart. Then came the hernia. At age 4, Jeffrey underwent surgery for a double inguinal hernia. The procedure was successful, but something changed in him. His demeanor shifted. Before the surgery, he was energetic, always moving, always curious. Afterward, teachers would later describe him as emotionally flat. Detached. Quiet in a way that didn't feel shy, it felt empty. Like he was somewhere else in his head. There was no specific trauma doctors could point to. But his kindergarten report card includes a note: Jeffrey seems to daydream frequently. Doesn't connect with the other children. As he grew older, his interests took a strange turn. At first, it was insects. He would collect them in jars, dragonflies, moths, anything with wings. Then he moved on to frogs, small birds. Dead squirrels found near the roadside. He began storing carcasses in the family's tool shed behind the house. He wasn't killing them. Not yet. He told his parents it was for science. Curiosity. Dissection. And for a while, Lionel encouraged it. After all, he was a chemist. Maybe his son just wanted to follow in his footsteps. But Jeffrey wasn't studying anatomy. He wasn't writing notes or preparing for biology class. He was breaking the bodies open. Dismembering them. Soaking bones in bleach. He'd later say he just wanted to see what everything looked like on the inside. How it fit together. What held it all in place. He would nail skulls to trees behind the house. Sometimes he'd place animal heads on makeshift stakes. Years later, when police uncovered these stories, neighbors admitted they remembered the smell, something foul wafting from the backyard in the summers. But no one asked. It wasn't their business. Boys were strange sometimes. At age 8, he asked his father what would happen if you submerged chicken bones in acid. He wasn't joking. He wanted to try it. Lionel, seeing a spark of academic curiosity, showed him how to preserve bone matter using chemicals. Father and son, side by side, cooking death in glass jars. It's easy to look back and say, that was the moment. But the truth is more complicated. It wasn't one moment. It was a collection of silences. A collection of things ignored, things hidden, things left alone because they didn't seem urgent, until it was far too late. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't come from a haunted house. He came from a home full of tension, shame, and rooms where nobody spoke unless they had to. A place where rage simmered under the floorboards and sadness slept in the corners. And while his classmates were learning multiplication and state capitals, Jeffrey was learning something else entirely. What happens when something alive stops moving? What it means to control something completely. What it feels like when nobody's watching. The question isn't just where it started. It's why no one stopped it. The Dahmer backyard looked like any other in suburban Bath, Ohio. A modest home. A clean lawn. And at the edge of the property, just beyond the tree line, stood an old wooden shed. The kind of place most kids might use to store a bike or hide from chores. But for Jeffrey, that shed became something else. He didn't bring friends back there. He didn't talk about what he did inside. But over time, neighbors began to notice things, strange smells drifting on warm days, birds circling over the roof, animal bones in the grass. According to statements from childhood friends and later police interviews, it was inside that shed that Jeffrey began dissecting dead animals. He told others he found them on the side of the road. Roadkill. Trash to most people, but to him, it was material. He collected frogs, chipmunks, dogs, cats. Their corpses would be laid out on a wooden bench inside the shed. He used kitchen knives, scalpels taken from a biology lab, even tools from his father's workshop. His cuts were clean. Deliberate. He separated organs from muscle, muscle from bone. He didn't record what he found. He didn't draw diagrams. He simply took them apart. Sometimes, he would place the heads of animals on what looked like makeshift displays, propped up with sticks, arranged on boards, sometimes nailed to trees behind the house. Years later, investigators would uncover that he had mounted the skull of a decapitated dog on a wooden cross in the woods behind the shed. According to one FBI behavioral analyst who reviewed the case in 1992, the display suggested ritualistic thinking. Jeffrey later told police he didn't see it that way. He said he was just curious. In his own words during interviews, he described the shed as the place where he felt most in control. It was where he could be alone with his thoughts, without interruption. He began boiling animal flesh in coffee cans using bleach and detergent, methods he learned from his father. Not to study the bone, but to preserve it. To keep it. Some bones were stored in jars. Others, he buried. But the intention was clear, he didn't want them to rot. He wanted to keep them around. One friend who used to ride bikes with Jeffrey at the time recalled being invited into the shed just once. What he saw made him sick, jars with organs floating in them, a decaying bird skull pinned to the wall. He never went back. Lionel would later admit in interviews that he knew Jeffrey was fascinated with animal anatomy. But he believed it was scientific curiosity. They never talked about what happened in the shed. Lionel didn't ask. Jeffrey didn't offer. Years later, when questioned by investigators, Jeffrey admitted that by the time he was 12 or 13, the dead animals weren't just puzzles to him anymore. He said he began to feel a kind of excitement. A closeness. He said it made him feel like he was touching the inside of something private. That nobody else was allowed there. He was still a boy. But his thoughts were shifting. The smell from the shed was no longer just the stench of death. It was the start of something building. And it went unnoticed. Because nobody opened the door. By the time Jeffrey Dahmer reached his teenage years, the strange silence that followed him as a child began to harden into something else: detachment, isolation, and addiction. His peers at Revere High School in Bath, Ohio, would later describe him as quiet, awkward, often alone. Teachers noted that he rarely made eye contact. He didn't join sports. He didn't show interest in clubs or student activities. He kept to himself. But even in his silence, he was noticed. Some classmates remembered him as a class clown, doing bizarre impressions to get laughs. He'd fake epileptic seizures in the hallway, mimic people with speech disorders, bark during science class. Behind those performances, he was hiding something more personal, something he didn't know how to talk about. By age 14, Jeffrey Dahmer had started drinking heavily. He brought alcohol to school almost daily. Vodka was his preference, but sometimes rum or beer. He kept it hidden in the lining of his army fatigue jacket. Other times, he stored it in his locker. He drank in the morning before classes, during lunch, and sometimes after school on the walk home. When questioned about it later by police and psychologists, he simply said it helped him feel normal. It kept the thoughts at bay.
Their flesh.
It made me feel like they were a permanent part of me. Besides the just mere curiosity of what it would be like, it made them feel that they were a part of me, and it gave me a sexual satisfaction to do that.
His classmates knew. Some thought it was just a weird habit. Others knew it was more serious. One former student recalled asking him what was in his cup during class. Jeffrey answered, straight-faced, "My medicine." Records from the Bath Township Police Department confirmed that Dahmer was picked up at least twice before the age of 18 for public intoxication and disorderly conduct. Each time, he was warned. No serious charges. No follow-ups. While his drinking escalated, so did his confusion about his identity. In interviews later conducted by both forensic psychiatrists and the FBI, Dahmer admitted that by his early teens, he had come to the quiet realization that he was gay. He never told his parents. He never told a teacher. He never told a friend. He kept it buried, afraid of rejection, ashamed of how different he already felt. But his fantasies grew darker. His earliest sexual arousals were tied not just to other young men, but to the idea of control, of having them still, unresisting, silent. It was June 18, 1978. For days after his high school graduation, Jeffrey Dahmer was home alone. His mother had left the family house with his younger brother, David. His father had moved into a nearby motel after the divorce. At just 18 years old, Jeffrey had the entire house to himself. No rules. No supervision. No one watching. That's when he saw him. Stephen Hicks, 18 years old, was hitchhiking along State Route 224 in Bath Township, heading toward a rock concert in Chippewa Lake Park. He was slim, clean-cut, friendly. Jeffrey pulled over and offered him a ride. The two young men struck up a casual conversation. Jeffrey told him he had beer back at his house, weights in the garage, music in the basement. Stephen agreed to hang out for a while. They drove to the Dahmer residence. Once inside, they drank, talked, and listened to music. It was easy. Too easy. Jeffrey didn't expect Stephen to stay forever. But when Stephen stood up and said it was time for him to leave, something clicked. Jeffrey panicked. According to his later confession to detectives and court psychologists, Jeffrey said he didn't want him to go. He walked to the garage and picked up a 10-pound dumbbell. He came back into the room where Stephen sat on a chair, his back turned. Without saying a word, Jeffrey swung the dumbbell twice into the back of Stephen's skull. When Stephen collapsed to the floor, he straddled him and used the bar of the dumbbell to strangle him until he stopped breathing. Jeffrey later said the act gave him an overwhelming rush of power and control. Afterward, he masturbated over the body, a behavior he would repeat with future victims. The next morning, he dragged Stephen's body to the crawl space under the house. A few days later, he decided it couldn't stay there. He dismembered the corpse in the basement, using a kitchen knife and later a hunting blade. He separated the head, limbs, and torso. He then placed the flesh into plastic garbage bags and transported them into the woods behind the house. For the remaining body parts, he used what he had learned from his father, household acid and bleach, to strip the flesh from the bones. He boiled the severed head and attempted to keep the skull but found it too brittle, and later crushed it with a sledgehammer. He then scattered the pulverized bones in the woods. He would later tell investigators that he flushed parts of the remains down the toilet, specifically the smaller pieces of flesh that he had dissolved in acid. This was confirmed during his confession and matched by forensic details recovered at the family home and in the surrounding area, though most of the biological remains were unrecoverable due to the time lapse. For nearly a decade, Stephen Hicks' disappearance went unsolved. His parents filed a missing person report, posted flyers, made phone calls, and waited. They never gave up. His body was never found. It wasn't until 1991, 13 years later, that Jeffrey Dahmer finally admitted to killing Stephen Hicks. He provided detailed accounts to authorities during his interviews with Detective Patrick Kennedy and others. His description of the dumbbell, the dismemberment, the acid, and the bone crushing matched what was expected from forensic patterns. Hicks was officially listed among his victims. That first murder was not impulsive, nor was it planned in the traditional sense. It lived somewhere in between. A moment Jeffrey later described as the one time he felt like he had complete control over another human being. It would not be the last. And nobody, not the neighbors, not the missing person detectives, not his family, had any idea that something irreversible had just taken place in that quiet, suburban home. In the fall of 1978, just 3 months after killing Stephen Hicks, Jeffrey Dahmer enrolled at Ohio State University in Columbus. He majored in business. His father paid his tuition in full, hoping college would offer structure. It didn't. Jeffrey spent most days drunk. His dorm room became a holding cell for half-empty vodka bottles and takeout containers. He barely attended class. Official university records confirm his GPA was 0.45. After just one semester, he dropped out. Lionel, now remarried and running out of options, gave him one. The U.S. Army. In January 1979, Jeffrey enlisted. He completed basic training at Fort McClellan in Alabama, then trained as a medical specialist at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. In July 1979, he was stationed in Baumholder, West Germany, serving as a combat medic. For a while, it worked. Army evaluations from his first year describe him as average, even reliable. But by 1980, his drinking habits had returned. Fellow soldiers would later describe him as a loner, quiet, intense, always drinking when off duty. Years later, 2 African-American servicemen who had been stationed with Dahmer came forward. Both testified that they were drugged and raped by him during their time in Germany. Soldier 1, in a 2010 interview with the Today Show, said Dahmer assaulted him repeatedly over a 17-month period. Soldier 2, interviewed in The Guardian, recalled waking up groggy in a barracks room after a night of drinking. He had no memory of what happened, but his body told him something was wrong. The U.S. Army never formally investigated the claims at the time. There were no reports filed. Dahmer continued serving until March 1981, when he was discharged for alcohol abuse. The discharge was labeled honorable with conditions, meaning he wasn't criminally punished, but his service was cut short. The Army offered him a one-way ticket to anywhere in the United States. He chose Miami Beach, Florida. No friends. No family. No plan. He worked at a sandwich shop, lived in a small motel, and spent most of his wages on alcohol. Within weeks, he was evicted for not paying rent. He slept on the beach. Slept in a cardboard box. For the first time in his life, he was completely on his own. That's when he picked up the phone. He called his father and asked to come home. Lionel said no. But he offered an alternative: go live with your grandmother. So in late 1981, Jeffrey moved to West Allis, Wisconsin, just outside Milwaukee. His grandmother, Catherine Dahmer, was a kind, devout woman. She welcomed him with love. She brought him to church every Sunday. She made him meals. She gave him structure. For a moment, it worked. Jeffrey found a job at a Milwaukee blood plasma center, drawing blood from donors. He kept it for nearly a year. But the drinking didn't stop. After 10 months, he was let go. He stayed unemployed for 2 years. And during that time, the urges returned. By 1985, he began visiting local gay bathhouses, mostly in Milwaukee's downtown district. These were places where men could have anonymous sex in private rooms. At first, he was just a customer. But he soon started spiking his partner's drinks with sleeping pills, crushing prescription sedatives into powder and mixing them into rum or soda. He waited for them to pass out. Then, while unconscious, he sexually assaulted them. It wasn't about romance. He didn't want conversation. He wanted silence. Control. According to official court records, he did this to at least 12 men over several months. When multiple victims began to report waking up confused, sore, and sick, the owners of the bathhouses revoked his membership. They didn't call police. They just banned him. So he changed locations. In September 1986, he was arrested for lewd conduct in public. Police reports show he was found masturbating in front of 2 teenage boys near the Kinnickinnic River in Milwaukee. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 1 year of probation. His grandmother never knew. But the ban from the bathhouses and the arrest didn't slow him down. It only made him more cautious. He started bringing men to her home. He offered them drinks, sometimes money. He made it sound casual. Safe. He drugged them in the kitchen. He carried their limp bodies to the basement. He told police later, they wouldn't move. That's what I liked. The assaults continued, quietly, beneath the floorboards of his grandmother's home, where she prayed upstairs and baked pies for church. He had adapted. And the basement became something it was never meant to be. Because now, it wasn't just sex he was after. It was stillness. Total stillness, and something worse was coming next. November 20, 1987. The Ambassador Hotel, a quiet, historic building on West Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee. Room 507. Jeffrey Dahmer had brought a man back from a local bar, Stephen Twomey, 25 years old. According to police records and Dahmer's own later confession, the two checked in late that night. Dahmer had no plan to kill him. At least, that's what he told investigators. He said he just wanted company. He brought sleeping pills, a drink, and a camera. But when he woke up the next morning, Stephen Twomey was dead. His chest had been caved in. His lips were bruised. Blood covered the bed sheets and stained the mattress. Dahmer's fists were also bruised, but he claimed he had no memory of the killing. His official statement, "I just looked down, and he was dead. I couldn't believe it. I blacked out. There were no witnesses. No cameras in the hallway. No record of a struggle." Dahmer checked out of the room, went to a department store, and bought a large black suitcase. He returned to the hotel, stuffed Twomey's body inside the case, and called a cab. The taxi driver helped him load the suitcase into the trunk. No questions asked. Once back at his grandmother's house in West Allis, Dahmer dragged the body down to the basement. Waited for a week, while the rest of the house slept, he dismembered Stephen Twomey. He removed the head, arms, and legs. Using knives and a sledgehammer, he separated flesh from bone. The flesh was wrapped and thrown out with the garbage over several weeks. He boiled the skull to clean it and then tried to preserve it using bleach. But the skull eventually became too brittle and collapsed in his hands. He discarded it. Stephen Twomey's body was never found. And because no one knew he was missing, no police report was ever filed. Dahmer would later tell authorities this killing changed him. He realized that as long as he avoided people who had close families, who weren't expected home, who could disappear quietly, he could keep doing it. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It became a method. He began hanging out in gay bars across Milwaukee. He picked men who were alone. Immigrants. Runaways. Young men in survival mode, just trying to get through the night. He offered them drinks, money, photos. Anything to get them to say yes. His grandmother never knew. She complained about strange smells coming from the basement. She noted that Jeffrey had begun staying out late, sometimes returning with men who never came upstairs. She once found a man passed out in the living room. Jeffrey said he was just drunk. She never called the police, the basement door stayed closed. And so did the truth. It was January 1988, and James was standing near a bus stop when Jeffrey approached. He offered him $50 to come back with him, to model for a few photographs. James hesitated, but he agreed. The boy's name was James Dockstader. 14 years old. Mixed Native American and Hispanic heritage. He was just trying to help his struggling family make ends meet. He'd run away from home. That's when Dahmer found him. They arrived at Dahmer's grandmother's house, the same house where Dahmer had been living since his release from the army. The basement had become his private domain. His grandmother never went down there. She never asked questions. Once inside, James was given a drink, laced with sleeping pills. Within minutes, he was unconscious. Dahmer sat with him. Watched him breathe. Waited until he was completely still, and then he strangled him. He kept the body for nearly a week, hidden beneath blankets in the cold basement. During those days, Dahmer returned to the corpse repeatedly. He later admitted to performing sexual acts with the dead body. When decomposition began, he dismembered it in the bathtub. He tried to preserve the skull. Bleached it. Boiled it. But the bone became too brittle, and it crumbled. He disposed of it. The rest of James's remains were thrown out with the trash. No one reported James missing right away. He was a runaway. Marginalized. Forgotten. For Dahmer, that made it easier. Fewer questions. No trail. The perfect victim. But James was not his last. He had discovered a method that worked, a script that allowed him to repeat the same steps: find, lure, drug, kill, and dispose. And he learned something important: bleach could only preserve so much. Acid, on the other hand, had possibilities. What began in the basement would soon move into apartment 213 when his mother told him to move out. And the death toll would rise. Quietly. Until it couldn't be ignored. In 1989, he also molested a 13-year-old boy. He was convicted and he got probation, but once he got out he continued offending. He wasn't choosing at random. Jeffrey Dahmer had a pattern. A profile. His victims were almost always young men of color, Black, Latino, Southeast Asian. Most were gay. Many were poor. Some were homeless. Some were just kids. All of them were vulnerable. Easy to approach. Easy to discard. Between 1989 and 1991, the killings became more frequent. Almost monthly. Dahmer began constructing his own version of control, not just in life, but in death. Inside his small one-bedroom apartment at 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213, Dahmer transformed ordinary tools into instruments of horror. He kept bleach, hydrochloric acid, formaldehyde, and industrial drums in his unit, chemicals used to break down human flesh. He took Polaroid photos of his victims in various stages of dismemberment. Bodies arranged. Posed. Skulls cleaned and preserved. He kept hearts in the freezer, genitals in jars, and sometimes, he cooked and consumed parts of them. These weren't trophies out of impulse. They were tokens of possession. Of dominance. A way to keep pieces of them, so they could never leave. Dahmer later admitted that some of his crimes weren't about killing, they were about creating zombies. Victims would be drilled in the head while still alive, then injected with muriatic acid or boiling water. He was attempting to erase their will, while keeping their bodies functional. None of it worked. His so-called experiments led to slow, painful deaths. And yet, the smell coming from apartment 213 drew complaints. Loud noises. Power tools in the night. But when maintenance visited, Dahmer always had an excuse. Spoiled meat. A broken freezer. Rotten food. He was polite. He paid rent on time. He was white. And no one pushed further. The people who kept disappearing were not. Families in Milwaukee were reporting sons missing, sons who had last been seen with a quiet, awkward man who often offered money for photos or drinks. Some families went to the police. Some even knew the man's name. But still, no arrests. No search. No pattern pursued. July 22, 1991 IT began with a promise. Jeffrey Dahmer had approached 32-year-old Tracy Edwards at the Grand Avenue Mall in Milwaukee. He offered him $100 to come back to his apartment, take some photos, and hang out. Tracy agreed. He had no idea he was walking into the end of a horror story, one that almost claimed him as the final chapter. Inside apartment 213, the door closed behind him, and something felt off immediately. The smell hit him first. It wasn't trash. It wasn't food. It was rot, thick and chemical, like something long dead but still wet. Then he noticed the blue barrel in the corner. A chemical drum labeled hydrochloric acid. Cardboard boxes stacked high. A power drill on the table. Formaldehyde. Ether. Polaroids. A handcuff on the floor. Edwards watched Jeffrey shift. His eyes went cold. Then came the words, "I'm going to eat your heart." Dahmer lunged. In the chaos, he managed to clasp a handcuff around one of Edwards's wrists. But Tracy fought back. He kept calm. He smiled. He played along. He asked for a beer. He waited for the right moment. Then, he ran, barefoot, handcuff clanging. Tracy Edwards escaped that apartment, bolted through the hallway, and flagged down two Milwaukee police officers, Robert Roth and Rolf Mueller. Breathless, he said. "A man tried to kill me. Please come." The officers agreed to return with him to the apartment. What they found changed American crime history. Officer Mueller spotted the Polaroids first, graphic, stomach-turning images of dismembered male bodies, posed with precision and care. Then came the fridge, a fresh human head in a clear bag. The freezer, a human heart and slabs of muscle. In the closet, 7 painted skulls, meticulously cleaned and stacked. The blue barrel was filled with muriatic acid. Inside it, 2 torsos dissolving, drawers held genitals, biceps, severed hands. In total, evidence of 11 distinct victims.
He had killed more than a dozen people and eaten some of them in his Milwaukee apartment that was literally a house of horrors.
There are 11 individuals or parts thereof that were recovered. We have also, in addition, through our investigation, determined that the suspect may well have been involved in at least 17 homicides.
Tracy Edwards escaped from Dahmer's apartment and testified at Dahmer's trial.
As to who you were sitting next to who was doing all these things.
A bizarre individual, someone that was very confused at this time.
There had been an earlier tip. Milwaukee police got an emergency call about a 14-year-old Laotian boy in similar circumstances, but did not investigate. 2 officers were later fired. The result was inevitable. 16 life sentences. Not enough retribution for the sister of one victim.
And just beyond that, his confession. Dahmer admitted everything. 17 murders. Each victim named. Dates. Methods, what he kept, what he consumed. He spoke for over 60 hours across multiple interviews, with an almost clinical calm. He said he wanted to make zombies. Said he injected acid into living skulls to try to control them. Claimed he killed to stop people from leaving. To keep them. He described eating hearts. Cooking biceps. Saving bones. The country was stunned, the LGBTQ+ communities of Milwaukee were enraged, the legal system, exposed. February 15, 1992. The jury reached its verdict. Jeffrey Dahmer was found legally sane and guilty on all 17 counts. He was sentenced to 17 consecutive life terms, a total of 957 years behind bars. He was transferred to Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin.
The spectators now included high school parties, organized to remind youngsters of the perils of going with strangers, for fun or for money, and that this was no ordinary trial was emphasized by allowing the relatives of the victims to address the court, and, at last, to confront Jeffrey Dahmer.
My name is Shirley Hughes, and I'm Tony Anthony Hughes' mother. First of all, thank God, and to give thanks to the judge and to Mr. McCann for the verdict that came in. I would like to say to Jeffrey Dahmer that he don't know the pain, the hurt, the loss, and the mental state that he had put our family in. But I'd just like to read a poem that a good friend of my son wrote. Tony thought you was his friend. He knew you. Why am I a victim in your cruel and rueful world, although I can't communicate with a loud voice? Listen to me anyway. Try to have mercy on my moans. Look at the tears roll down my face. See that each one is a cry for help. And realize my sign of showing you that I want to live. Tell me just what is it that I've done to you to make you such a monster, to make you such a maniac, to make you such a devil. My God, who are you? What are you? You have never shown me this side of you. I put my trust in you. I thought you were my friend until the end, yet I didn't know you as well as I thought. I never felt the end would be this way. Is there anyone that can help me? Mom, dad, sister, brother, someone, please help me. What's happening to me? Everything seems to be slowing down. I'm confused. I'm drowsy. My coordination has been contaminated. My friend, what is it that you is giving me? What is it that you're doing to me? I'm helpless. Is that a thrill to you to know that I can't fight you back? And that the hardest struggle in my life is fighting to keep my eyes open with the hope of seeing the dawn of a new day. Yet you have total control over me. My life is in the hands of once a friend, but now a total stranger who have become my worst nightmare. But one day I know you'll get caught. You think you're smooth at what you're doing. Remember, whatever's done in the dark, it will come to the light, and the whole world will know just how ugly a person you really are. Mom, I'm gone. My hope, my breath, my want to live have been taken away from me unwillingly and emotionally. I know that there's a dragon piercing your heart day and night because of this, but yet I'm not far away. When you get cold, I'll wrap my arms around you to warm you. If you get sad, I'll softly grab your heart and cheer you up. 2 fingers and 1 thumb means I love you in sign language. My son was deaf. When you cry, take 1 teardrop and place it outside your window ledge. And when I pass by, I'll exchange it for one of mine. 2 fingers and 1 thumb, Mom.
My name is Dorothy Straughter. I'm Curtis Straughter's mother. I don't have nothing prepared to say. It's just a few things that I would like to say. You took my 17-year-old son away from me. I'll never get a chance to tell him that I loved him. I'd have a chance to tell him that I loved him the last time I saw him, which will be a year tomorrow. You took my daughter's only brother away from her. She'll never have a chance to sing and dance with him again. You took my mother's oldest grandchild from her, and for that I can never forgive you.
I'm a J.W. Smith, brother of Edward Warren Smith. Edward Warren Smith tried to be Jeffrey Dahmer's friend. As a result, he lost his life. Mr. Dahmer, Eddie's gone now, the victim of your senseless killing. Where do we go from here? we ask ourselves, why did this happen to a person like Eddie? He gave so much and asked so little. All he wanted was a chance to be himself, a chance to be happy. When all the facts are known, we hope that society will have gained some knowledge that will help prevent a tragedy such as the one Eddie suffered. There was no sacrifice too large or too small for Eddie. He truly loved giving and gave of himself abundantly.
My name is Inez Thomas, and I'm the mother of David Thomas. You know, I don't understand how a person could really harm a person and to say that, well, I did this because he wasn't my type. Well, if everybody go around doing something to somebody because it's their type, this would be a sad world today. And I just feel that this man should never be able to walk the face of earth or to be able to harm anyone else again.
Good morning, Honor. My name is Donald Bradoff. For the Bradoff family, as much as love in our family close, my mother gave 5 beautiful kids. We lost, he destroyed the baby of the family, and I hope you go to hell. I love this world. You guys did a wonderful job. Bottom of my heart, thank to God, I've got a lot of strength. Thank you all. God bless America.
My name is Rita Isbell, and I'm the oldest sister of Errol Lindsay. Whatever your name is, Satan, I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you, motherfucker. I hate you. This is out of control. Don't fuck with me, Jeffrey. I'll kill you. God damn it. Look at me, motherfucker. I can kill you.
What's your name, sir?
Jeffrey Dahmer didn't evade justice. He was escorted past it, again and again, by a system that chose convenience over questions, silence over noise, and indifference over intervention. From the first warning signs in his grandmother's basement to the chilling night Tracy Edwards ran barefoot into the street with a handcuff dangling from his wrist, every moment was a missed opportunity. The neighbors had complained. The bathhouses had banned him. A 14-year-old boy was returned to his killer's arms. And when the evidence was finally undeniable, photographs, body parts, painted skulls, a fridge with human remains, it wasn't a detective's brilliance that uncovered it. It was a survivor, running for his life. 17 young men, most of them black, gay, and vulnerable, erased not just by one man's obsession, but by a culture that didn't see them as worth protecting. We know their killer's name, his face, his childhood, his fantasies. But how many people can name even 5 of the victims? How many can tell you what they loved, who they called family, or what dreams they never got to reach? If this story raised more questions than answers, you're not alone. The justice system had every chance to stop him, and each time it failed, another family was shattered. If you believe their names deserve to be remembered louder than his, like, share, and subscribe to stay with us. Because sometimes evil doesn't wear a monster's face, it wears a wedding ring.